Hello and welcome to It's About Youth with me, Fei Kwan. Fraser's Hill is often associated as a cool highland retreat, but it is more than a holiday destination. In fact, it's part of Malaysia's central forest spine. It's home to incredible biodiversity and is a refuge for various species. Now, like many of our natural treasures, Fraser's Hill also faces growing challenges amid climate change. Here to help us understand about this area a little bit better and how youth can play their role in protecting it, I'm joined by two experts from WWF-Malaysia. They are Carell Cheong. She is the Manager of Protected Areas at Fraser's Hill, as well as Azhana Zakirah Ghozali, Program Officer of Protected Areas at Fraser's Hill. Thank you to both of you for joining me in the studio today.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us as well.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Very glad to be here.
Yes, and thank you for coming down all the way from Fraser's Hill, where you're now usually based. Now, firstly, when we're talking about this area, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the intro, that most Malaysians tuning in now would kind of associate it as a place more as a family holiday. They're not aware about the rest of Fraser's Hill as a whole. Carell, what is it about Fraser's Hill that makes this highland ecosystem so unique compared to other parts of our country?
Well, the conservation area of Fraser's Hill that WWF is working on, it encompasses not just the town area that people used to go, but it encompasses an area of about 76,000 hectares. So it consists of 5 forest reserves of Pahang. 5 forest reserves of Pahang, namely Batu Talam Tambahan, Tranum, Sungai Sia, and the Green Boundary. And we've collectively call this as the Fraser's Hill Forest Complex. So these 5 forest complexes are collectively known as that. And the Fraser's Hill Forest Complex is located within the central forest spine. And the western boundary of this forest complex is actually along the Titiwangsa Range, and it borders Perak and Selangor in the east, in the west. Okay, this forest complex has an assemblage of about 20 mountain peaks of elevation more than 1,000 meters above sea level. And what is important is that these forest reserves, the land use of these forest reserves are rather minimal, because almost more than 90% of them are protected as water catchment forests and soil protection forests under the National Forestry Act. Yeah, so what sets this apart? What sets this forest complex among the wider ecological network is that this area is an important ecological linkage within the central forest spine. So it supports wildlife movement as well as genetic diversity. So in addition, this area is an important water catchment forest. So most of the rivers feed into the Sungai Pahang River Basin and supporting downstream communities for their water supply, as well as the agricultural sector in Pahang. And furthermore, more importantly, is that the Fraser's Hill Forest Complex actually regulates the climate in the sense that in its role as a significant carbon sink.
Right, so it does play quite a lot of roles, and it's a very important protected area, forest reserve. How about the plants and animals over there? Are there any that are specifically unique to Fraser's Hill, or any recent discoveries from your team?
Oh yes, in collaboration with the Forest Research Institute Malaysia, we recently completed a botanical inventory of the Fraser's Hill Forest Complex. From the results of this study, we found that this particular forest reserve, forest complex, actually houses almost 16% of the total flora of Peninsular Malaysia. And this works out to about 1,400 over species. And out of these 1,400 over species, 186 are only found in Peninsular Malaysia and nowhere else in the world. And more specifically, 9 of them are exclusively confined to this Fraser Hill Forest Complex.
Right, so hyper-endemic species.
Yes, they are called hyper-endemic species. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you, Carell, for sharing. You know, we're talking about just how diverse this area is and the wildlife there. What are then some of the biggest threats that are facing Fraser's Hill today? Are they mostly human-driven, like development, or I'm curious, are they more climate factors that are playing a role? Azhana?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Fei, for the question. Yes, definitely. There's a few, I would say, environmental threats that the landscape is currently facing. There are things like poaching, where wildlife and also plants are being illegally hunted as well as taken from the forest. There's also issues such as habitat encroachment, where forested areas are being cleared to make ways for any types of development. And also there are plans for like big infrastructures, for example, like building roads that might cut through the forest, and also activities such as mini hydro dams. And these activities would definitely affect the ecosystem as well as the function of the forest. And for example, the mini hydro dams, right? It would eventually disrupt the river flow that is located in the forest, and ultimately the impact can be felt by both the wildlife and also the community living and also surrounding the landscape. And also on top of all of those environmental threats, I would say climate change actually makes things even more complicated. To be very clear, there hasn't been like a scientific studies done specifically on Fraser's Hill, but there are few examples that we can see at other tropical mountainous area where you can actually see like there's impact from the rising in temperature in terms of the wildlife movement. And also, I would say like wildlife, they tend to find cooler places for them in order for them to stay and also to adapt due to climate change. And you can think of it like how we human always try to find for shades, right, on sunny days. So technically,
turning on the aircon a lot more
exactly. So like technically it's the same for wildlife, but the shades here actually refers to a cooler and also higher elevation. And if we were to think about it, wildlife, they can move pretty fast, they can adapt pretty fast, but what about plants, right? Not so much on that, because for plants, they actually takes longer time, decades, sometimes even centuries, for them to be able to adapt to the changes in climate, as well for them to be able to move in this sense, because plants, they spread through seeds as well as growth, right? I would say
depends on the wildlife.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Very different from wildlife, right? And this would definitely put more pressure for them, like in terms of being more vulnerable to extinction. And I would say like the other tricky parts about this is that Fraser's Hill is already located at the very top of the mountain, meaning when this species actually tried to move upslope towards the top, they actually would ended up crowding, also cramping themselves in this little last bit of space on the top, right? Yeah, so this would cause more competition in terms of food, space, as well as breeding, and it can push the already vulnerable species closer to extinction.
Yes. So we're already seeing sort of changes in terms of those migration patterns and behavior. Are there any other sort of changes in species like population and behavior as a result of the pressures that Azhana has mentioned, Carell?
Oh yes, definitely. We are observing changes on the grounds. Like some of the seasoned bird watchers who used to frequent places all over Peninsular Malaysia, they were observing that lowland bird species are actually now found in highland areas. So, and it sort of suggests that they are actually moving upslope, and it could be likely due to temperature rise or forest loss in the lowlands. Yeah, so these changes, so meanwhile, these highland birds, as what Azhana explained earlier, so these highland birds that depend very much on the cooler temperatures are facing a shift in their breeding as well as feeding patterns. So birds may nest later or earlier, and probably due to to match the changing patterns, cycles of plants and their feed. So specifically like insects, you know, change in activities, the insects' activities, as well as the fruiting of plants. So all these changes will actually affect the cycles and thereby affecting their feeding habits, their feeding patterns.
And I'm assuming with more lowland birds moving up higher north, there's greater competition as well.
Yes, greater competition for food, for shelter, for everything.
And how about you, Azhana? Is there any other wildlife that you're able to give examples of?
I would say like, our team has carried out a biodiversity assessment study in 2019 using camera traps, you know, those hidden cameras that you can actually find in the forest that actually take pictures of wildlife and also humans whenever they sense movement passing by through it, right? So yeah, from that study, we actually found something amazing where we got to know that Fraser's Hill houses is actually a home for like 11 species of endangered wildlife that is listed under the IUCN Red List. And few stars of the list, I would say we have Dole, also known as the Asiatic wildlife dogs, and also the Malayan tape, which both of these species, they are listed as endangered under the IUCN Red List. And also we are very happy and also pleased to know that from the study, we get to know that Fraser's Hill is also a home for the majestic Malayan tigers. As well as the Sunda pangolin. Yes, exactly, iconic symbols. But the sad thing is that both of these species, they are listed as critically endangered under the IUCN Red List, meaning that they are at the very edge of extinction. And I would say that these findings, it's both inspiring but also alarming for the team, right? Because like I say, we are happy to know that Fraser's Hill is still an area, is still a lifeline for this species, but it also kind of like reminded us of how important it is for us to have it conserved.
And the fact that you're still discovering new species means that this is a huge area that is still largely under-researched, understudied. How is then WWF, the both of you and your team, working to fill this kind of gaps in knowledge and to help preserve the biodiversity here at Fraser's Hill? Azhana, do you think you could give us a little bit of a glimpse of any current projects that you're working on?
Sure. I would say that the team is working on a few important fronts actually, but I would say like the core and the heart of our work actually lies on advocacy. The team has been actively engaging with the state agencies to get the landscape protected because as Carell has mentioned earlier, the forest reserve within the landscape, within the forest complex is actually classified as water catchment and also soil protection area. So, you know, having us advocate for it to be gazetted as a state park instead would give the landscape the legal protection that it needs. And also, secondly, aside from advocacy, our team is also focusing on engaging and also empowering the local community, especially the orang asli. So like for example, currently we are continuing our study to understand how the orang asli community that is living at the southern part of the landscape is depending on the forest for their livelihood. And this study is important for us because once you get to understand the relationship between the community and also the landscape, that's how you get to know how we can actually empower them to be a champion in the conservation. So aside from that, we are also actively engaging with the orang asli community to push for what we call as inclusive conservation, where we are trying to capacity build the orang asli community to make sure that they are fully equipped with skills and also to make sure that they are involved in decision making about, for things that involve the landscape and also their home, right? So in summary, I would say that our work actually it's kind of like we are making sure that everyone is working together, to keep the landscape thriving as well for the nature and also for the people.
Because even if you're not within the Fraser's Hill forest complex, there's going to have trickle and ripple effects on those in lowland areas as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I love to hear the work that you're doing in engaging the orang asli community because it is their land, most importantly, and if anything, they would be the first to see or feel those effects. I'm curious then, what are some of the biggest challenges that your team is facing, or the biggest concerns that you have when it comes to sustaining the conservation efforts there?
Honestly, there's a few, but I would say the first thing is actually to secure funding, because as we all know, conservation is not a quick fix, right? The work requires a long time, sometimes even decades, for you to even see the impact of the work that you are doing. And I would say like not most lah, but the funding opportunity out there, most of them are short-term and also tied to a specific kind of project. So it makes it a bit challenging for us to sustain the activities that we are doing, to keep the momentum, especially for works that requires consistency, like engaging with the communities. And I would say aside from funding for our team, other challenge would be in terms of manpower, because as you can see, our team are relatively small. It's just the two of us plus another one officer.
Right.
Yeah, but the work that we are doing is very huge. We are talking about advocating for the protection of an area that stretches for about 76,000 hectares. So like the work involves ranges from going into the field, doing field monitoring, engaging with the communities, building rapport with our state agencies, writing reports, and also writing proposals. And I'm pretty sure Carell can agree with me that sometimes both of us feel like we need to be at 5 different places at one time.
Yeah, between the three of you.
Yes, exactly. And I would say that despite all of these challenges, our team continued to push forward, even though sometimes these challenges might reduce our impact and also slow down our progress. But we still believe that even though it's a little bit tiny baby steps, but it will eventually contribute to something bigger.
When we're talking about lack of long-term funding and lack of manpower in your team's context, then I suppose it's also important to also, besides Orang Asli, also having to rope in the younger people, the younger generation in. For people watching then, to put it in the most basic terms, Carell, why should young people care about protecting Fraser's Hill? Or, in your experience, maybe you can also talk about what are some of the most effective ways to inspire action?
Yeah, actually, the future of our youth today is really at stake. And the choices we make now on conservation, on the environment, actually will shape the world that they are going to inherit. So, if we continue to lose biodiversity, we don't just lose the plants and the animals, but we will, our basic necessities, like the air we breathe, the water we drink, even the food we grow, and even our mental well-being, all will be impacted. You see, so conservation is not just about saving trees, saving animals or any other species. It's about protecting our future, protecting our future for our next generation. So youth, actually, the young people today has a lot to gain by protecting, but they have all the more to lose if we don't. Yeah, you see, around the world, today, around the world, you can see that youth are actually initiating climate strikes, sustainability campaigns, and even holding corporations accountable.
Yeah, because as you said, they are inheriting a world that is heating up.
Because it's theirs. It's going to be theirs. So all these prove that their voices matter. And you see, it is so important for you to care about conservation, because they will be the leaders, the lawmakers, and the change makers of tomorrow. And that is so important. So their voices, their actions, and their choices will actually shape the world that they want it to be, and how we value and protect the environment for tomorrow. For them. Yeah.
Exactly. And are there any sort of effective ways you think that can inspire them to take further action?
Oh yes, perhaps Azhana.
Yep. What are some meaningful ways that youth can
Young
take?
people.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I mean,
Such as
as
yourself.
a youth myself, right? I actually think that it is important for us to first build the connection for it, because like peribahasa Melayu, right? Tak kenal maka tak cinta, right? Yeah, so like you cannot really care about some things if you haven't experienced it. So I would say, getting the youth to be out there, experiencing the nature is really the first step. Because and this can actually be done through simple things like going for a trek, maybe doing some bird watching, or maybe you can join like a volunteering program to plant trees, to do some beach cleanup, and even joining events that actually pushes for citizen science. Because I strongly believe that once the youth are able to see the beauty of the nature as well as the threat that the nature is currently facing, it could build a really emotional connection from that, and that connection can be very powerful. And I would say once the connection is built, that's when we can move to the next step, which is sharing the effort and also the awareness in a platform where young people love to hang out, TikToks, Instagram, Facebook, and they can share it in terms of short videos, behind the scene moments, or even cool and also relatable conservation stories. Because I think when it is peer led, things felt more real. Like for example, if you were to see your best friend going for like mangrove replanting or whatnot, right? It felt more closer to you, and that's when you feel more interested to learn more about it and to listen to it. And once the youth are able to be exposed to this, I think youth can then see how their little effort actually make changes, in real life changes, and that's where I guess we hope for a shift in mindset among the youth, where conservation actually stops being other people's job, but also a part of their life mission as well.
And as Carell mentioned, their voices matter, so it's important for them to have a seat at the table. Well, let's hope that this would inspire more youth to take part in it and to make your lives easier, right?
Oh yes, we really hope so, because we are counting on them. We are counting on all of them. Because if not, it needs to have that sustainability there.
And if I were to add another peribahasa, berat sama dipikul, ringan sama dijinjing, it's all of our responsibility, and it's our will to inherit and to protect. Thank you so much, the both of you, for sharing your insights and speaking to me a little bit about Fraser's Hill today. I've been speaking to Carell, Cheong and Azhana Zakirah Ghozali from protected areas of Fraser's Hill at WWF Malaysia. This has been It's About Youth with me, Fei Kwan. Thank you for watching, and good night.